Hello and welcome back to Dukascopy TV. Now, do you spend your well-earned pennies on Prada? Do you go gaga for Gucci? Because today we're talking luxury goods. I'm joined in the studio by Christian Mustad, partner at Edgar Brant. Christian, thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure.
Now, many people think of luxury goods companies as being able to withstand anything that's going on in the economy around them. It's even been referred to as being able to print your own money. How much would you agree with this?
I think the stand I take is that no, I wouldn't agree. I think in many ways the word luxury conjures up images which are, I think, misleading. When one thinks of luxury traditionally, one thinks of these products that are just for the very well off, these consumers that maybe will not stop consuming no matter what the business cycle is, whereas the reality of the luxury industry that we know today, I mean, is by definition one of volume. I mean, these big groups, the advertising that they make, I mean, it wouldn't make any sense if this was just targeting the happy few. So there is a real sensitivity, and there will always be, to the business cycle. I know it must be a bit counterintuitive because, I mean, when one looks at what's been happening to the big luxury groups over the last years, I mean, there has been a world crisis, and they have kept going up in terms of profits, of revenues. But yes, that's just one structural aspect that's happening in Asia. Yes, a whole chunk of the population has now a standard of living which allows it to become client of these luxury brands. But still, I mean, in the slightly longer term, one must absolutely take into account the business cycle to understand how these groups are going to evolve.
I see. And a lot of people would look to these large companies and assume that they all have very large profit margins. Mm-hmm. And is this always the case? I
think there's two things. It's if you take luxury, I mean, there are one needs to distinguish. I mean, if we look at say, I don't know, yachts, that's just items that are built one by one, so one cannot really talk about profits and scale and size and economies of scale. But for other aspects, where other products where there is an industrial base behind it to actually produce and manufacture these goods, then yes, there is. One can look at, yes, big luxury groups and say they're so big that somehow the whole idea of having issues with the margin, the margin of profit isn't important. But one has to understand that in most cases these big groups are formed by a whole lot of smaller brands. And these brands cannot really be just merged into one single supply chain, one single purchasing policy, because then they lose their soul, their specificity. They become just the sort of, one could think of the different brands that the GM group owns, for example. It's really the same cars with different stickers. If one wants to keep the specificity of these products, then the issue is the volume of each brand is not that big, or can sometimes be small, and then the whole idea of managing profitability quite well is important, because adding to that you have advertising costs, and then you have the distribution structures, which is also a big cost factor. So I'd say it is everywhere. Yes, profitability is everywhere, and certainly not something that's not an issue with managers in the luxury industry.
I see you mentioned there about these large multi-brand companies. How difficult is it for them to balance between synergies as well as staying true to their own value and making good quality products?
It is very difficult. I mean, because there are obviously temptations to rationalize cost bases, maybe not because they have a problem with profitability, but just to allocate maybe more resources to more distribution or more communication. But again, to me, the key point is what's the soul, what is it that justifies the prices that consumers pay? And that's a very touchy subject. And when one starts to try and rationalize the supply chain, the way things are produced, how the components are purchased, there is a risk that, maybe not within a semester, but maybe over 3-4 years, the brand itself loses its evocative powers, really, its ability to command such high prices, and then you lose the benefit of all the investment that has been done. So there is, the big groups are from what I've seen and we've seen, remain very cautious about finding a balance between finding good ways of managing these companies, having group and professional standards in many ways in the way companies are managed, but still keeping all the specificities that make the company and that give space for the brand and the company to have its own culture, its own brand and product line, and keep a mixture between these two. But I think it's an ongoing struggle, really, and it's really a key issue in managing these groups successfully.
Well, thank you very much, Christian, for joining us in the studio today.
Thank you.
That's all from us here at Dukascopy TV, but if you want to keep updated on all the latest updates, just go to the Dukascopy website. Take care.